All right, welcome everybody to episode 2 of Unwinding the Spool Podcast. My name is Andrew, and I am joined by one of my good friends, Will, and we are the 3D printing gurus, as we like to call ourselves. We started this podcast to basically tell all about the ins and outs of 3D printing, all the way from the very basics to the most cutting-edge, advanced technology in the additive manufacturing and 3D printing industry. So if you guys haven't checked out our episode 0, kind of our introductions, or episode 1 where we talked about what is 3D printing in a general sense, definitely go check those out either on our YouTube playlist or on our Spotify and Anchor playlist as well. So in this episode, we have some very exciting content to discuss with you all. We're going to be talking about buying your first 3D printer or really getting hands-on with your first 3D printing experience. You can watch all the YouTube videos in the world or do all the reading in the world, but unfortunately, the best way to learn about 3D printing is just getting hands-on with it and really learning a lot about it. So I'm going to let Will
preach it.
What's it? Oh, preach.
Oh, preach it.
Yeah, amen.
Amen.
No,
amen. Let me get in the back.
Yeah. I'm going to let Will take us off with point 1 here. We're going to do a quick recap of our previous episode of kind of what is 3D printing, Will.
All right, so I'm going to keep this really quick, everybody, if you just listened to our last episode. But we define 3D printing. We love using the glue gun analogy, which is that effectively 3D printing is just a glue gun on a robotic crane, and you basically squeeze out the glue and build it up layer by layer, and then as you're squeezing, you're just making new parts, making things vertically as you go. And so that's basically what 3D printing is. It's a smart glue gun or a dumb glue gun, depending on how you've had experience with it. And it just it extrudes material, in our case plastics usually, onto a bed. And that bed moves around, and you go upwards and upwards until you've got your 3D printed part.
Exactly. So in manufacturing sense, there's really 2 main forms with a lot of subgenres, but one main form is subtractive manufacturing, which is a more traditional style of manufacturing where you have a solid block of something, whether it be aluminum, wood, steel, and you cut away that block to get to your final part. 3D printing, or the more official term for it, is additive manufacturing, and it does just as Will described, where you're additively, layer by layer, making a part from basically nothing. So it's pretty cool seeing it start as nothing, and then whether a few hours or a day later, you come back, and it's hopefully all nice and finished.
Hopefully it's something.
Yeah, and it's not a spaghetti
Hopefully
monster.
It goes from nothing to something rather than nothing to nothing, but with pizzazz.
Yeah. If you come back to a room full of plastic spaghetti, you've done something wrong, or your printer has done something wrong.
Exactly. Or more likely the printer's done something wrong. Yeah.
So
there we go. Well, so Andrew, I wanted to start this off. We wanted to start this off by talking about our first 3D printing kind of experiences, and I wanted you to kick it off and talk a little bit about what was your first experience and kind of what did you learn from that?
Okay. Well, this is kind of a cool point for us to talk about, because our first 3D printing experiences were right around the same time. As I mentioned in our episode 0 episode, Will was the one that introduced me into 3D printing. So without him, my introduction to 3D printing either might have never happened, or it might have just been a lot later, and I wouldn't have had the cool experiences at UC Irvine, our undergraduate college, that I did with our team and everyone else. But basically, my first 3D printing experience, I joined into the speculative prototyping lab in the UCI Art School. Our senior design project was run by a professor who worked out of the art school. He's art technology. And we did the Marching Cubes project, which is basically a physical...
Oh, that's throwback.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's
wow.
Some late hours on that project. But basically, you can Google Marching Cubes because it's like a whole thing. But the short story is, I think Marching Cubes is like a way in a physical, tangible world to render a 3D model based on a specific layout or certain different shaped printed blocks. Or I guess they don't have to be printed. But this professor wanted to do this project using 3D printing. So my first real nitty-gritty experience with 3D printing was running a print farm with Will and many of our other teammates of, what was it, like 35 something MakerBots and like 2 or 3, or like 4 Airwolf printers, right?
Well, so it ended up being 12 Airwolf printers at the end of it. And so, no, you're right. We began with that, and then we kept adding them because they'd break down.
Yeah, we need to have that.
So we ended up with something like 52 printers total.
Yeah, that was, I just remember.
That was insane.
We had that room, and it was like on the 3rd floor of just all those printer bots. And and
it was unair conditioned.
Yeah.
It was unair conditioned in the summer.
Well, yeah, I guess air conditioned. It was air conditioned in the sense if you were cold, you could go in there and you'd be warmed up instantly. It was hot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you were ever too cold, that's the place to go.
And if you also wanted to lose some brain cells based on all the plastic fumes that were going on, because the ventilation probably was not ideal.
And even for PLA, I remember getting in there going, ooh, whoa.
Yeah. But, yeah, and then on the Airwolves, I can't remember if the cover plates for those blocks were PLA or ABS, but I just remember the ABS had some nasty stank to it.
Well, so the ABS, we would print an ABS on the Airwolves, but the PLA plates were made of a colored PLA, or those plates were made of a colored PLA. But still, they were, I don't know what was happening with that PLA, because it was like, eee.
Yeah, no, it was pretty crazy. So, but yeah, no, my first 3D printing experience, I was really thrown into it. It was really cool. I really had no background information about 3D printers at all, like little to no idea of kind of how they worked, except I know they used this plastic wire and it went in and then it kind of squeezed it out and it turned into a part. But it was very rewarding. Rest in peace, PrinterBot. But
rip.
But it was very cool working with these little PrinterBot printers. It was they were the simple metals, right? So
yes, they were the PrinterBots. They were this big.
Yeah, very basic little printer. And we basically had to know how to do like a quick like NASCAR pit stop if these things broke down, of either swapping out hot ends or nozzles. I remember we had a whole like tank full of the nozzles just sitting in acetone if we were trying to get them unclogged. We had like spare motherboards on deck, limit switches, the whole 9 yards.
I mean, the only thing we ever didn't replace, and we still even replaced one of these, was like those metal bed plates.
Yeah,
like that was even like it was the whole thing could like I agree. I love the NASCAR analogy of like we could just go in and like vrant. Okay, now the printer's ready to go. Let's go repair the other stuff in the background.
Yeah, and then we had that whole procedure of like testing it, because like for those that don't know, with Cura, you can plug the printers into your computer and actually manually control and run G-code from your printer. So I remember going through kind of like the troubleshooting like G-code list that we would have, and like, okay, does this work? Do the fans turn on? Yada yada yada, and then we just get it back into the print farm and get it running again. So that was my real first experience with 3D printing, and it was very cool, and I learned a lot. So, Will, how about you?
But what just I'll start mine for sure. But just what a crazy, like, I can't believe I brought you into that. As like I was like, hey Andrew, like you want to come help with this? And you're like, sure. I mean, this just goes to speak to Andrew's like tenacity and panache to just jump into something, because it was like I was like, hey Andrew, you've never done this. Guess what? You now have to work on this 24 hours a day.
Right. Yeah.
For the next couple of months.
At that point, that was when I was living up in Irvine. And we were rooming together at that point. And so we could like pull these crazy night shifts, like, all right, someone has to stay till 10 to get the next batch of prints going when these ones stop. But it was really crazy. But it was a team environment. I remember like our part cleaning days where we had all the blocks just printed and we had to clean all the support off and everything. But it was super cool.
I think Sharon still got scars on her hands from cutting all herself all the time.
Those chisels are razor sharp, man. Just
those chisels were nuts.
Yeah. But it was cool. I started learning my basics on CAD too around then.
Caddyshack and CAD, baby.
Caddyshack and CAD. So how about you? What was your...
Yeah, so it's funny. It ties in kind of pretty well with what I did. So Andrew, when you joined, the lab was about, I'm going to say maybe a year and a half old, 2 years old. And Aldrin and I helped start that lab. And so my first experience was when we started the lab, which was back when we did the solar powered house building competition in 2015. And just to summarize that, which is that the Department of Energy here in the United States puts on a competition where schools from around the world build houses that are entirely solar powered. And we wanted to put forth like a workshop, a tool room of the future. So you're kind of like, you're next to your garage space was this tool room, this workshop.
Right.
And so we had a 3D printer and some kind of advanced chop saw thing.
And a 5-axis mill.
Yeah, something. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be dope. Yeah, I feel like you'd kill all the power for the day. You'd have your 3-phase 5-axis mill going on, and then it'd be like, well, honey, we can't have any warm dinner tonight. Why? Well, I wanted to make I wanted to mill out my car parts.
Yeah, I want to make our dinner plates out of billet aluminum.
Yeah, I milled out our cutting boards, and so now we can't do anything.
Yeah. No, that's a really cool idea though, like because additive is a cool solution for around the house. Like if something breaks, it's a easy way to just kind of print and replace another one instead of having to order something, and then every time you order something, you're adding to that that carbon footprint of the supply chain.
Yeah, and it's funny because the 2015 was kind of the tail end of what I'm going to call the first wave renaissance of 3D printing, where everyone was like even IKEA was like, we're going to create a catalog of parts you could print, and like everyone was kind of hopping on the idea that like 3D printers were going to be in every home within the next decade. In some ways, and it has, in some ways it hasn't. It's still very much a hobbyist thing for the household, but so Aldrin and I both were environmental engineers and still are, but we were, studying, obviously all of us were studying to be environmental engineers, and we both were like, well, we got to add some aspect of environmental sustainability to this 3D printing room, basically in the house. And so we posited that you could recycle the plastic. And so that was kind of our thing. We didn't really have to prove it. It was very, it could just be kind of the idea of it. It could be very, just prototypic. And so we were able to, but what we did is we got some 3D printers, and my first experience was kind of trying to get these, I think both with a Dremel 3D20 and then an Airwolf printer. Both of those I was like, okay, I got to try to get these to work. Right. And those were in the early days of auto leveling. Auto leveling wasn't so great. It was trying.
Yeah, that was when
auto leveling wasn't great.
The capacitive sensors, right? And not now. Yeah. Now most auto leveling use the BL Touch probe.
Exactly.
Right.
Which is great. Those probes are amazing. But back in the day when they were trying to you get the Airwolves would just slam into it and be like, I can't make a connection.
The glass shatters and stuff.
I had stress dreams about the freaking nozzle going into the glass and and then you see the plate just spread apart. And you're like, oh, well, there goes another one.
Yep. Well,
that was my first experience for sure.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of part of the first time 3D printing experience. Something has to go wrong,
absolutely
wrong, for you to really learn. Okay, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Something has to go so wrong you have to replace a part, and then you're part of the 3D printing world.
Right. No, I clearly remember though, because when you guys started in the speculative prototyping lab, and that was you transitioned from the solar decathlon into doing the cart, right, with the recycling station for grinding, extruding, melting, extruding, spooling this recycled filament. And I was at the time, I think I was working on that wind turbine project for I can't remember the professor's name, but that project didn't go as I had hoped, just because there were so many hoops that I had to jump through. And you were like, come on, join on. And at first I was like, 3D printing, that kind of sounds weird. What good is that going to do? Lo and behold, it's my freaking life now.
I was about to say, yeah. What good is that? What's good is that for? Except my career.
Yeah, no. But then I made that jump. I think the fall or winter of our junior year, and that's when I started helping out with the Marching Cubes project, and never turned back, baby.
Returning back, baby.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, it's our first 3D printing experiences. You usually start with some basic kind of entry level printers. Although the Airwolves are pretty good. Definitely have some.
They're better now. Yeah. They definitely were a little. They were shooting. What Aldrin and I like to say, they were shooting out of their league in the beginning. They were like, oh, we're a professional grade printer. And it was like, yeah.
just needed some R&D work. But what's funny is for those that don't know, I went to the largest 3D printing trade show in the country last week, and I was super stoked because I thought I saw an Airwolf printer, and I went over, and it was one of their new ones, the really like tall one that they have. It wasn't Airwolf themselves, but it was at like another booth, so I'll have to.
Oh, cool.
Maybe.
Oh, the Evo Plus thing they've got.
Yeah. So maybe we can try. Is his name Eric Wolf? Is that his name?
He'll come on. For sure.
We'll try and get him. Tell his story of how he started and had some frustrating experiences with the first printers, and now they're accomplishing some pretty remarkable stuff.
They really are. I will give him that. They really are.
So, and he has that Dodge Challenger where he's printed some stuff.
I knew you were going to bring up the Challenger. I knew you.
We're both car guys, so
it's true. It's very true.
But yeah, so that's kind of like a sum of our first 3D printing experience. Definitely frustrating, but very rewarding. That's
absolutely
frustrating moments with 3D printing, as some of you will figure out or have already found out, are the most rewarding and most learning enrich. I don't know if that's the right way.
It's a great learning curve.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty fun. It's like once it works out, it's so fantastic because you go from like, I can't get anything done to like, oh my gosh, I could do anything I want.
Right.
And it's very cool.
Yeah. And not to get too off on a tangent, because this could be a whole other topic for another episode, but like being good at 3D printing in the beginning is just knowing what to look out for. So like being a good troubleshooter, like, oh, my printer is doing this.
Absolutely.
This is the cause, or this is the effect. I need to find the cause or something like that. Kind of doing like cause-effect analysis.
Absolutely.
And just having all those, whether it be a booklet of like errors that are possible, like, oh, the print is like squishy and not super strong. Oh, you might have a nozzle clog. Just stuff like that, things to look out for. And you learn that as you work with your printer and print stuff on it. So that's half the battle, is just knowing how to troubleshoot the printer and what to look at.
Absolutely. Do you want to recap what we talked about in terms of finding kind of little to no cost options for 3D printing? Or do you want me to do that?
No, I can do that. In the last episode, we talked a little bit about, let's say if you're just kind of turning the page and looking at 3D printing as like, I want to get my feet wet and try this, but I don't want to invest a ton of money in it, or you're really dedicated and you just don't have the budget for it right now, which is perfectly understandable because they, while they have come down in cost, they're not cheap by any means.
No.
There's a lot of great places that you can go for a lesser cost or no cost to use a printer. So I'd say the first one that comes to mind is a local city run library. It depends, varies from city to city, obviously, but some cities, will have computer labs, and that has kind of sparked some cities to also have like 3D printing labs. And I've never really actually done this, so it might be one of those things where like you have to bring the material or things like that. You have to provide some of the parts that you need to print as far as like material goes.
So I can add to this real quick, which is that usually you usually just buy, like they'll make you pay like a very small fee, like $3 per hour or whatever. That includes your material and includes usage of the machine, but you do have to bring your part and convert it to whatever they need.
Right.
Usually just an STL is fine.
Yeah. You're not going to have like an CAD liaison there. Like you have to know how to like put it into the printer.
Yeah, there's no design department at your local library.
Yeah.
But I have noticed. So I've worked with a lot of because I also work in education, but I've worked with a lot of maker spaces in universities and public schools and things like that. And so generally, they're pretty not strictly run, but they're kind of like a service bureau.
Yeah,
like you should have a part in mind,
right? Have
something that you found, and then you come to them and you pay a very small amount of money to have it printed.
Yeah, no. So it's a great way to kind of try out your first 3D printing experience, kind of get the feel for what it's like to either download a file from Thingiverse or another CAD site, like a share space, or design your own part and then have it printed. Because it's a very cool experience seeing something go from a digital file on a screen to or a digital model on a screen to a physical, tangible part.
Absolutely.
So libraries is a good one. And again, it's going to vary depending on the city you live in and the resources they have. But then the other one Will kind of already touched on is our schools, universities. So schools and universities oftentimes have maker spaces. It depends on the school again too. Sometimes they might be limited to just students, or maybe not if you like pay a small entry fee or something to use some of the equipment. I know UCSD has a pretty large maker space, but so that's definitely something you can look out for, is like local colleges, whether it be community colleges too. It doesn't have to be like the big four-year universities. And then there just might be, privately run maker spaces too, right? I mean, because,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, they definitely exist. I think that if you're looking in terms of like cost, it's like your public library is the first set. Like that's going to be cheapest. The only reason like a community college might be more expensive is you might have to pay whatever tiny enrollment fee they have to use their equipment. But depending on how much you want to use it for, it might be worth it. Like if it's a very small,
like a monthly fee maybe too.
Yeah, and it might be great because you can go, like, not only use the 3D printers, but maybe you can take some classes on additive manufacturing.
Sure.
I know Cerritos Community College in SoCal, they have a great 3D printing education program.
Oh, nice.
As well as just overall a great plastics program, I'll be honest. And so that's great. And then also in terms of, like, private maker spaces, there's a lot, like, they tend to be in more like populated areas. A few of the hubs for maker spaces I can think of are like San Diego, Los Angeles, the Bay Area.
Yeah. But there's a lot of like
Seattle. Yeah, where a lot of the tech is. Yeah, although like Lincoln, Nebraska also has a bunch of them. Oh. I know,
who'd have
right?
thought?
Lincoln, Nebraska. On the East Coast, a lot of the spaces, but there's like lots of little private maker spaces. And those spaces tend to also be pretty cheap, and they also get you access to not only 3D printing, they get you access to CNC milling, wood shops, laser cutting, all kinds of stuff that you can use.
Sure.
So, but that tends to have like a membership fee that's not exactly super cheap. It's less than buying a 3D printer, but it's also like you have to pay monthly, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's really just going to depend on what you're trying to get out of it, and at some point. If you're still getting into 3D printing and you have a small budget, it might be worthwhile just to save up and wait for a printer to go on sale. Like I just got my most recent printer for home use here on Amazon Prime Day for like $200 off. So sometimes you can find some really good deals, which we'll talk about towards the end of this video. But it's really just what you're wanting to get out of it, and the other thing too is like if you have CAD files or 3D models that you want printed, you're not maybe super interested in learning about the printer itself right now. There are options where you can send your parts in and they'll print them for you and send them in the mail to you. And that, might kind of help you spark your interest in 3D printing once you see these parts arrive in the mail and you use them for, whatever it is, your projects or things at home. So that's also another option. It really just depends on what you're trying to get out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I think in terms of price, it kind of goes like public library, college/university, private makerspace, and then like service. There's definitely lots of online services where if you're less interested in like knowing how the 3D printing is done, if you kind of are okay with a black box, like I'm going to send my file, it's going to get printed and shipped to me, and then I'm good.
Right.
That's okay. Like if you're looking just to see what 3D printing looks like, that's usually also very fast. They tend to have a quick turnaround time. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind that is like one of the more expensive options. I've definitely spec'd parts that are like $7,000 on these websites where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go buy a printer.
Yeah. You're better off just learn the CAD, buy the printer, and do it yourself at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the great thing is like in the past, even since we were in college, even the past 5 or 6 years, like personal 3D printing has come down so much in cost. The barrier to entry has really come down, and kind of a great segue into our next talking point on this podcast episode here is kind of like what are if you are in the position where you're saving up or you have the budget to buy your first 3D printer, where should you look? What companies should you look at? because there's a lot out there, especially from the other side of the world there in the Asian area. There's a lot of Chinese-made printers, and some are really bad, and some are really good.
Some are terrible.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of things to consider when buying your first printer. So we're gonna kind of start talking about that now. And I think there's kind of different points at buying your first printer. So we're going to start with, if you are a DIY hobbyist and you like doing 3D printing at home and you're wanting to buy your first printer to experiment, print parts, do whatever in your own household with your own, personal budget, where should you look? So Will, you want to kind of get that going?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's funny. I'm going to probably segue right back into you, Andrew, here for this one. But I think that one of the things to begin with, and this is something I suggest to people, is the Creality series of printers. Creality is made by, is the company Creality, Andrew? I'm suddenly blanking.
Yeah, the company's name Creality.
It's Creality. So
Creality.
There you go. And so the Creality series is something that I've suggested to a bunch of new 3D printing people.
Yeah.
And I have not had I've never had anyone say, "No, this sucked. I didn't like this."
Yeah.
And so I very much have had a lot of positive reviews from family, friends. So Andrew, you actually got started on yours, and you still run Creality systems at your house. So what you want to kind of talk about what that experience has been like?
Sure. Yeah. No, definitely. It's kind of funny because you were the one that pointed me towards the CR10 family of printers when I was looking, I think, a little less than 2 years ago. But yeah, so in December of 2019, I purchased my first personal 3D printer. Up until that point, I had probably had experience running over 30 different kinds of printers. So I was really trying to weigh the best option as far as features.
Absolutely.
And as far as price, obviously, and build profile, how big of parts you can print. So the printer that kind of came to mind was from a company called Creality, and now they are I don't know if they're in Taiwan or what part of China they're in, but they're in the very kind of tech-based area of China or Taiwan. And so, you always kind of hear mixed reviews of like, quality isn't there, but so far, I've had really great experiences with it. So in December of 2019, I purchased a Creality CR10 V2. So it is kind of like the second version of the popular CR10 printer. And it's about a 1 cubic foot of build profile. So it's really big for the price that you get. It's a really popular printer because you can basically print a full-size helmet that for most people with average size heads you can wear over your head. So a lot of people will print like Iron Man helmets, Mandalorian helmets, stuff like that. That wasn't really what I was looking to get out of the printer. I'm going to be, been doing more like car focused projects and designs. So I ran that printer, and I also ran it for work as well during COVID when we were all working from home. So I was running my personal 3D printer for work. And really that thing, I've probably put, I'd say close to, if not more than 2,000 hours on that printer. The only things that I've had to do to it are replace the nozzle and replace the Bowden tube, because the little like pneumatic fittings for the Bowden tube got pushed out. Other than that, the printer has been, knock on wood, has been superb. And the print quality is great. You can print all your basic level materials like PLA, PETG prints really well on it. And then next I'm going to be looking at printing the closed loop plastic hips and the ASA, because my new 3D printing enclosure I'm working on will be ventilated, so I don't have to worry about the gnarly fumes from some of those materials. So then when I've had there you go right there. Got
old school graphics.
For all the people just listening, Will is throwing up the closed loop plastic business card. But yeah, so I've had really great experiences, been able to print some really large parts with that. So then actually just back in July, I purchased a second CR10 from Creality. This is the CR10S Pro V2. So it's got a few more features, got auto bed leveling, and some like dual extruder gears and better Bowden tube setup and things like that, a nicer touchscreen. So I haven't really used that a whole lot yet, just because I'm kind of in the process of building up that enclosure to support the printers. But once I do, it's going to be pumping out some cool car parts. But yeah, so I kind of, in sum, the printer, like the CR10 V2, I got for like $450, and then the CR10S Pro V2 I got for like $500 because it was on sale on Amazon Prime Day for like $200 off. I'd say the biggest things, the frustrating points that you can find sometimes with the Creality printers is like in shipping. If you pull the printer out of the box and you get it set up and it seems like it's working okay and there's no damaged parts, you're good to go, because after then, the chances of something happening are not as high. But like, for instance, when I got my second printer, one of the brackets was actually bent, and I don't know if that was when they were building the printer or if that was a supplier/shipping problem when it was in the warehouse somewhere. But these printers get sent across the ocean, sent to a warehouse, and then delivered by some courier service, whether it be Amazon or whoever else. And so if they get dropped, I guess that's, something you always have to worry about, whether you're ordering it online, which is most people. And then the only other thing is, sometimes the Creality customer support can be hit or miss. I've had to reach out to them on something with my first printer. And I had a good experience, but other people haven't. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes customer service is hit or miss, depending on who you're working with. The other reason why I like these is they have silent stepper motors. So they're super quiet, quiet. So all you basically hear is the white noise from the cooling fans, which is great because actually when my first printer that I bought was actually a CR10S, standard one, and it was so loud. Like, we had it upstairs in our loft up here, and we were trying to watch a movie, and you just hear, yeah. So if you're going to be putting this printer somewhere where, you are going to be living, sleeping, watching TV, definitely look for something with silent stepper motors and a silent motherboard, because that is a huge benefit to have in a printer.
Huge benefit, especially with large prints or things that are going to take multi-day.
Right.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll touch on, I think the reason why, I'm actually going to put a video on this on my YouTube channel coming up here. I think the reason why the CR10 V2 is one of the best first printers you can buy is, A, the build profile is huge, so it allows you to print some really cool parts. You can print some pretty good materials, not like nylon, because you need an all-metal hot end. But the big thing is it has the old school kind of like 8-bit. I don't know what type of screen do you call that? It's like an 8-bit.
It's just an LED, classic LED. Scroll screen.
Yeah, classic LED scroll screen that runs Marlin firmware, which is, for those that don't know, Marlin firmware is like the OG firmware that 3D printers use when when you're going through all the menus and submenus. So if you're wanting to learn a lot about the programming behind the printer and like the menu setups and everything like that, you use Arduino and C++, I think, right, is what it runs?
Yeah. Well, Arduino's native programming is a version of C++.
Oh, it is a version. Okay. That is one area of 3D printing that I have yet to learn more about, is the coding behind it. So I think that's another great reason why, if you get a printer with the classic LED style screen, is it allows you to look at that a little bit more. So anyway,
absolutely.
From my point of view, I think Creality is a great brand to look at if you're an entry-level hobbyist with, maybe balling on a budget a little bit. Especially the Ender series. It's a little bit smaller, but it's definitely more affordable a little bit more affordable than the CR10s because they're smaller. So, anyways, that was a long-winded rant from me, or not rant, but explanation. So
I don't know if that's a rant.
Yeah. So, Will, because you have your own kind of personal 3D printer there that you're going to talk about.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, I totally agree with all of that. I think that honestly, the best place to start is the CR10 series. The Creality series is great. I think if you're looking for, if you're somebody who's used other 3D printers before, maybe not your own, but you've used a friend's or something, or you're looking for something a little more in the kind of open source space, then I would definitely go with probably what I have, which is a Prusa. So I have a Prusa i3 MK3S, and that is a classic FDM printer. I got it as a kit, so I had to assemble it.
Right.
It's a lot of 3D printed parts, and it's a lot of assembly. It takes about, I think generally it takes about 8 to 10 hours to assemble it. And you spread it out, obviously. And so it is, as a kit, it's about $700. As it's fully assembled, it's about $900. But it is great. It has fantastic auto leveling. It has amazing self-checks. The firmware is awesome. It has some probably has the most accuracy bang for your buck. And also what's great is because of all the self-checks that it has, you can assemble it and be like, I don't know if I did a perfect job, and it will know if you did a perfect job or not.
Okay.
And so it'll tell you, like, hey, did you do a good job? No, go back and do this again. Which is hilarious to get told by a machine to, like, you screwed up, go back and do this again. So yeah, when I assembled it, both my colleague Aldrin and I both got these kits. We've been preaching the Prusa vibe forever. It's such a good machine. Out of the box, can print really accurately. What's also great about the Prusa machines, I will say, unlike the Creality systems, is the breadth of materials you can print on it. That's not to say it's a bad thing, but like just Aldrin and I we ran a materials company, so being able to run different kinds of materials.
Yeah, you got to be able to benchmark.
Exactly. So we want to be able to benchmark things from like PLA, PETG, polycarbonate, ABS, polystyrene. Like we wanted to be able to benchmark everything.
Right.
And so in terms of that, also the Prusa printer is just really a fantastic model. I mean, when I first built it, I'd say like I first built it and then I think the first thing I made was one of the lightsaber models.
Nice.
And those required such precision for the lightsaber pieces to be able to slide.
Right.
That I was really stoked about how great the precision was out of the box, where I had to do no tweaking on the software side.
Right.
It was just boom, ready to go.
Yeah.
And then also in terms of usability, the ability to interchange parts, to do upgrades, it's definitely way more open source, using any kind of material, using any kind of, you can flash different firmware if you want. I wouldn't suggest it, but you could flash different firmware. Prusa also as a company, Prusa is amazing. They are super on top of their customer service. I mean, it's so funny. So they're based in the Czech Republic, right?
Right.
But I'll send a quick message over their chat and they'll be like, very next day, like, hey, what's going on? Like, here's how we can help.
Sure.
And getting it shipped is amazing. They ship it so well. It's super protected, and the instructions for assembling it are very clear. And also, Joseph, Mr. Prusa himself, has very clearly made it clearly assembled each and every one of these himself, and very much knows what are some problematic areas. So there's special notes in the instructions of pay attention to this. This is going to be really important.
Nice.
10 steps later. So I think it was a really fun build process. And what's also great is by assembling it yourself, both Aldrin and I noticed is when things go wrong with it, it's very easy to diagnose and go, okay, I know I need to replace this. I know I need to get that done.
Yeah, you're getting the true hands-on experience there when you literally have to build the printer out of the box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's definitely, I don't know, Andrew, you and I talk a lot about cars, I imagine owning a kit car where you've built it from the ground up effectively. Even if you didn't make the parts and design it, you still had to assemble the darn thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you finally run it and you're like, why is it making that sound? Oh, it might have been because this thing is sticking out a little bit, or.
Exactly. That's exactly. And with the Prusa, I remember I got it and the Y carriage was just so noisy and it would go, wah,
right.
And I was like, oh, you know what that was? That was me not tightening the U-bolts correctly. So I have to go back and retighten the U-bolts and do that all again. And so, I think definitely in terms of next, if you are feeling like you want something more open source and you want a little more intensive of an experience, that's a great way to get on the learning curve really fast of how 3D printing works.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a classic situation of what you pay for what you get, right? So with the Prusa, obviously, even with the one being the kit is $700. That's like on the top end of most Creality printers.
Exactly.
You'll have to build it yourself, but you get a lot more features. Like you get the nice auto bed leveling. You get direct drive setup, right? Because it's so for those that don't know, direct drive just means that there's a gear and a motor at the very head of the printer, so it's pulling the filament into the hot end instead of kind of pushing it in a Bowden tube setup. So that kind of plays well when you're trying to print with like flexible materials like TPU. Although you can still do it on a Bowden tube setup, it just sometimes turns out better on a direct drive. And then I think the Prusas also have the not linear rails, but they're the you know what I'm talking about? Like the rails that the carriages slide on aren't like they're a cylindrical rod almost. You know what I mean?
Yes, they are. Yeah. Right. So the rails are definitely really fantastically done, and alignment is the good thing is your alignment doesn't matter. It kind of recalibrates itself based on whatever alignment actually happens with those rails.
Right. Yeah, so, I think, either way, it kind of, again, just depends on your budget, what you're looking to do. If you want to be able to print more engineering grade filaments right out of the box, the Prusa is going to be the way to go. But there's, pros and cons of both. The Creality is obviously a little cheaper, so you can maybe buy it a little sooner, learn about it a little more. It doesn't take nearly as many steps to assemble. They come, mostly assembled, and it really just requires you to bolt the Z tower to the base, and then that's really it. And then plug a bunch of things in together. But the Crealities on the other side, they're pretty easy to upgrade. So if you do want to print higher temperature materials, they make easily swappable hot ends or all metal hot ends. So it's really just what you're looking to get, I'd say. But the biggest similarity between these two for an entry-level printer, depending on your budget, is the community that supports and is around these printers is excellent. There are so many users of either Creality printers or Prusas. So if you just Google a question or a problem you have, whether you have a Creality printer or a Prusa, you're going to find the answer one way or another. Or if you post it in a forum, you're going to get an answer from someone else so there's a huge user community for both of these printers.
Absolutely. No, it's a fantastic community. I'd say, honestly, as Andrew said, the best way to learn is just to get involved with one of these communities. Just get started. Just if you save up the money, get into it. I built my little cousin, who was 11 years old at the time, built my little cousin's printer in like half an hour. That was the CR10 that he got.
Oh, nice.
I built it for him, and then I gave it to him. And that was it's pretty amazing because he's finally like getting to the age where he wants to interact with like the forums and things.
Yeah.
And so he's finally troubleshooting that isn't texting me. Like, Will, what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're both equally good brands. They have, obviously, their pros and cons to both. So it's just rather up to you now to decide what features you want out of your first printer and how much you're willing to spend and or commit time to putting it together.
Yeah.
So I think the next thing we're going to kind of talk about, segue away from, if you're a hobbyist kind of doing personal 3D printing at your home. If you own a business or you are at a business and they said, hey, let's get into 3D printing to either prototype some of our products or, use it as a solution for something, what are some printers that you can buy as entry-level printers if you have more of a budget, talking well over $1,000 here? So, Will, do you want to get started with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a classic. I feel like this is something that happens in a lot of firms these days is someone who makes a physical product is like, we need 3D printing, and they don't know what that means, but they're just like, we need it. So if you're one of those professionals who's been tasked as either a designer or an engineer or someone in the tech department to do that, I think my suggestion, and Andrew, you can be thinking about yours, and as I'm doing this, is my suggestion would be the Ultimaker series of printers. Any of the Ultimakers, like the S5,
yes,
even the 2 Plus, all of the Ultimakers are very, I like to say, Apple-esque.
Yes.
Let me look up what's the current S5 cost right now.
I think it's like $6,000, depending on if you get some of the options on the to store the filament, if I'm not mistaken. 6,000-7,000. Take a rough guess.
I think you're right. Yeah, no, it's about $7,000.
Yeah.
If you get the full package is $10,000. If you get like the dehumidifying,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's tough.
It's
it's very cool
system.
It is, and it's got all your filaments already loaded and like switches to them. And it's really cool.
Yeah. No,
however,
a great company for higher level printing. Like you said, they're a good equivalent to like the Apple of 3D printing. And you know, if you're doing this for a business, your business writes it off, obviously, for taxes. So maybe cost isn't as much of a factor.
Yeah, Ultimaker is great. The software is pretty, like if you're already doing 3D design, the software is very easy to integrate. Mm-hmm. They created Cura. They created some great slicing software. Their printers are very like kind of, they use a lot of third-party materials. That's not a problem, which is nice.
Right.
But they also balance that with very like clean, kind of black box calibration and things. Sure. Like it doesn't look like you're not going to have to do a lot of hobbyist level stuff to get them to work. You're just going to have to like, okay, this is like run the setup, listen to the instructions, you'll be good to go.
Right. Yeah, no, they're good. They're pretty plug and play printers. In our office we have an Ultimaker 3 extended, so it's the slightly taller version. It's not a huge build profile. It's like 8 by 8 by 10, I think, tall. But if you're looking to print small parts or, medium-sized parts, that's a great one. The S5, as Will mentioned, I think that's one of their largest printers, right?
And it's the newest one, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's got the nicer, like...
The S5...
Sorry, go ahead.
It has a great cloud-based program now. So the S5 is like, you can hook it up, so you can create really cool, like, cloud printing farms where you can hook up 10 S5s and they'll all kind of know what's going on.
That's super cool. That's kind of like
it is very cool
there for 3D printing, is when you can manage all your printers from one computer.
Yes.
But yeah, so their new printers, the S5 and I think even their newer S3s have like the nicer screen interface. So it's a little bit easier to work with. The customer support is I had to call customer support, or at least contact them a few times for an issue we were having with our Ultimaker 3 in the office, and they were pretty on top of it. They followed up with me to make sure everything was solved, and working again. I will say that we also have some Crealities in our office at work, and it's hard to tell sometimes the quality difference between a Creality and an Ultimaker. Not, putting down an Ultimaker by any means. It's also a good testament to Creality. So it's a good, middle tier printer if you've got a little more budget and you also want to print A, larger parts, and B, parts with higher grade materials. And I think most of their printers have the dual nozzle hot ends, right?
Correct. So I will say that like the Ultimaker is great for creating like more complex parts as well.
Yeah.
Because they can do dissolvable support material.
Right.
And like so a lot of the things that would require a ton of education on, like for the Prusa, if you wanted to like add another nozzle and like add dissolvable support.
Right.
They're already kind of built into the system for Ultimaker. So again, if you're just having a budget and someone's like, we need 3D printing and it has to do everything, then like that's probably the way to go.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. And so Ultimaker is a great one. Are there any other kind of brands on that level?
Just because they've been with us for so long, I will actually pitch the Airwolf Evo.
Yeah.
So Airwolf Evo's system, I will say, especially if you're like an automotive shop or a shop that creates parts, they've really pigeonholed it, but in a way that's really great. They've created a niche that is super specific. The Airwolf system is now, it can do desktop metal, so they can create, they can 3D print in metal, and it can 3D print plastic as well. And so it's got all of the things you need to really run a fantastically diverse portfolio of 3D printing projects.
Right.
So if you're like a design shop and you're making custom parts for cars, or even, I don't know, Andrew, aerospace even, you can speak more to that. But there's a lot of fantastic applications for what the Airwolf Evo and Airwolf systems can do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they have come a long way, and I think the one thing that I noticed when we were working with them a lot was they're focused on materials and doing the research and putting in the effort to statistically and scientifically show what materials are stronger and more suitable for certain applications, whether it be they need to be stronger in tensile strength, they need to be stronger in flexural strength, more flexible, they need to be chemically resistant, so they've done a lot of effort into tuning their printers for certain materials. And their new printers just look so cool. I mean, they're designed very well.
Look very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, having worked with them very closely and like meeting their staff and things like that, like many times, they hire, like, their materials are developed by like PhD level educated dudes who are very knowledgeable about what is going on with materials and material science, and they develop and they make a lot of their own materials in-house. So if you're looking for like to do some cool stuff with cool materials, but also have like a 3D printer that's pretty ready to go, that's definitely. Now, granted, let me check what the Evo price is real quick.
Yeah, it definitely creeps up there a little bit, I think.
No way, that's cool. Did they keep it down to... No. Yeah, they did. I was like, did they keep it down to $6,000? No way.
The other thing, too, with Airwolf is, they're a small business, so if you're able to support small businesses, that's...
They are a small business. They're local.
Yeah. They're just down the road from
yeah. They are. Oh, now they're in Vegas only.
They moved.
Yeah, they're completely out of California. They're just in Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do a lot of good.
But yeah, they cost like $8,000. They're like $8,000.
Okay,
so they're pretty expensive.
Comparable to like a well-equipped Ultimaker S5.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So and then there's so many brands out there with 3D printers nowadays. But one brand that has been around for a while. I haven't really had much experience hands-on with them. I've just kind of watched videos and heard about them as our MakerBots. I've heard a lot of companies use MakerBots as some of their...
So I have some of them at school now, by the way. Sorry. Just to put my own little word in there, which is none of them work. So
well, then maybe I'll retract that statement.
Just saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good, you want someone who has had hands-on experience with the printers. So clearly I don't know enough about them, but, and or know what it takes to get them running, well and reliably.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had time to really dive into it, so maybe it's just I haven't had the time, but it's very like, I got the Dremels to work, and they're older than those.
Yeah. Well, no, I think safe bet then, between Ultimaker and Airwolf, if you're a business, if you've been tasked with kind of standing up your 3D printing sector of your business, or you're starting a business that's going to be focusing on 3D printing, and you've got a little bit more budget because, you're going to be putting it towards tax write-offs and stuff like that, Ultimaker and Airwolf are really great because they produce definitely your quality products, and we've definitely racked up a lot of hours on our Ultimaker 3, and it's been pretty reliable.
Absolutely.
Pretty reliable.
That's dope. I'm glad. Yeah.
So I think that kind of covers all our points. I know we're kind of getting a little bit long in the episode here, about 53 minutes, but we're still doing good. So basically, to kind of do a quick recap, Will and I talked about our first 3D printing experience, very similar in time frames to each other, running print farms and dealing with stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. And then, talked about, where to find 3D printers to use if you don't want to buy one right away. And then we also, the meat and potatoes of this episode was if you do want to buy a printer, what brands do you look for based on the features you want? So Will and I definitely recommend either the Creality brand of printers, whether it's the CR10 family of printers, the Ender family of printers, They're great printers that print very well out of the box if you don't have any issues right up front with damage during shipping or anything like that. And then Will has great hands-on experience with the Prusa printers. They've been around for a long time, been well established in the 3D printing hobbyist market. And then if you're a business, Ultimaker and Airwolf are great printers to choose. So, did I miss anything, Will?
No, just a quick disclaimer: we're not sponsored or paid by any of these companies, so this is all just our experience and what we've done. So,
right? Yeah. No, that's very
this
good.
Is coming from a place of true experience and true suggestion.
Right. Yeah, it's a very good point to mention. We are not in any way, shape, or form sponsored by these companies. Although, if you do want to sponsor us, we're gladly open to options.
I mean, if someday, like not at episode 3, but like, if someday they want to, absolutely, we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll do all the videos you want talking about your printers if you sponsor us. But it's all true and honest reviews based on our personal experience. So I think that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. What are we talking about in the next one, Will?
All right, so next episode, folks, we are discussing computer-aided design for 3D printing. So we're going to talk about both of our experiences with computer-aided design and kind of how to get yourself started and where to seek kind of further education and training. So that is our next thing. So basically, just to summarize, computer-aided design is how you take your ideas from your brain to the page to the computer. Right. So that is how we're going to do it.
Slice it, and then you put it to your printer.
And then you dice it, and then you're set to go.
Awesome. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys all so much for either watching or listening in. We do appreciate your the audience you guys provide. Well, I'm really butchering this outro right now.
This is brilliant. This is the best outro we've ever done.
We appreciate your viewership / listenership. But yeah, thanks again, guys. Make sure you follow along for all our future episodes to come, either on our Anchor, Spotify, YouTube playlists, and many other platforms that we post to. And we're so excited to be doing this podcast with you all and share our experience, and we're looking forward to the next one.